Taylor Twellman of Apple TV, MLS coverage, formerly of ESPN. How's it going?
What's going on, boys? How are you?
Good.
Pretty good.
Great.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
coming
nice
on.
segue, but I think people were expecting someone actually famous.
I mean, it's relatively famous, right?
In my own mind, I am, Tyler. I'm not sure I really am in real life, but in my own mind, yeah, I'm a legend.
Hey, there you go. That's all you need, though. The confidence is there, right?
Yep, absolutely. What's going on, boys?
Not much. I know
happy to have you here.
you're excited to get down to South Florida with Jake and call the match between Atlanta and Miami. I mean, I'm sure you've been down there before. I mean, what are your favorite kind of spots down the South Florida area, I guess?
I mean, Sydney, I've had family in Delray Beach for 25 plus years. So, and obviously you guys or anyone that follows me on any social media platform understands I'm a degenerate gambler / golfer. So South Florida's been very frequented by me in years past. So I honestly, and I know you guys don't want to hear this, but you kind of do. I'm going to land, call Josef Martinez, ask him to sleep in his basement. I want to know exactly what he's doing before the game because the only reason why I'm doing this game is because Josef plays Atlanta for the first time, and I can't wait.
Yeah.
It's been circled. And we want to get to it. That's the big story, right? But I got a question to ask you going back a little bit earlier this year, because it's one guy that we haven't talked about on the show yet, and we tend to talk about him every time, and that is Luis Araujo. So earlier in the season, you mentioned that he was the biggest X factor for Atlanta United this season, which is true by all means. Yesterday, Bocanegra was talking about his capabilities and the knowledge that he's better than he's showing right now, essentially. What does Araujo need to do, or where does Araujo need to be placed, or what changes need to be made to this man in general to get him going for Atlanta United?
Tyler, how long do we have?
As long as you want. As long as you want.
I'm on the record, and I will always be on the record until something changes. It's a frustrating player to watch. If I was a 9 on this team, if I was a right back on this team playing on the same side, I think your listeners would completely agree with me. Maybe the only time they would agree with me, that game against Nashville is as frustrating of a watch as I've ever seen. The amount of times he gives the ball away, the amount of times the pass isn't played at the right time, the extra touch is taken. And listen, he looks the part, right? There's no denying there's natural, God-given pace and ability to open up the game with his legs. However, between the ears, I think at times the decision-making is one of those things where I'm left shaking my head. I think Brooks Lennon is frustrated at times because it looks like and it feels like, again, this is from 10,000 feet, that the timing's off between the two. You watch Gutman and Wiley play together, and there's an understanding, albeit they're two similar players, where Lennon and Araujo are two completely different players. I get that. But the connection between those two down the right, guys, that's been, if I'm Bocanegra, if I'm Garth Lagaway, and if I'm Gonzalo Pineda, I said it last game. I believe it. I think he's on borrowed time. I think Gonzalo Pineda is looking at this saying, it's just not going to cut it. And if you go out and spend big free agent money on Derek Etienne and you like Caleb Wiley, I think Atlanta's attack looks better with Caleb Wiley on the left side. Then I think you got to look at it. Listen, DP status or not, you got to make the right decision. And this one's interesting. I don't know his best position. I really don't. But Tyler, Sydney, and Tommy, I'm going to give you something for the listeners that I have not seen talked about, but this is my observation. And when everyone watches Luis play, and everyone on Twitter, especially the Atlanta fan, that tries to correct me and tell me how hard he runs and how committed he is, my rebuttal to you guys is this. How often is it in recovery? How often is it when he made a mistake or he wasn't in the right position. I watch him in the attack, and everything's reactive. Like the pace and everything else, unless the ball at his feet, he's not moving around. There's no movement there. I saw Thiago Almada, honestly, 3 times in the Nashville game, literally look at him with his arms up in the air, begging for some type of movement. And that's why I think he's got some of the fans in Atlanta fooled a little bit that, well, look at the recovery runs, look at all that. No, you didn't pay $12 million for a recovery run.
Yeah.
You paid $12 million to be one of the top 5 to 7 best attacking wide players in this league. And Carlos Bocanegra and company, they're just not getting it.
Would you consider this a valid statement? Atlanta got what they really should have gotten out of him, considering what he did at Lille before, and considering, I mean, you have essentially 4 or 5 goals a season, and of course he was using a different way there as a sub, but the numbers weren't anything that you could say he's absolutely going to pay off in the long run. I think his talent, like you said, was something that's easy to look at and say, all right, well, yeah, he has the talent to make a difference, but can he? Did they just get essentially what they paid for?
No, because here's my reason why, Tyler. If it's 4 or 5 goals, then he's not $12 million. He's not, right? So either they overpaid, or, I mean, quite honestly, they overpaid, or at some point the light's going to go off. He's going to have a 11-goal, 8-assist season, and then you're going to say, oh, that's the $12 million. But for right now, 4 goals at Lille is not worth $12 million. I don't care who you are, and I don't care what the profile is. If it is $12 million at Lille, for me, at the minimum, it's 8 goals, 8 assists. That's the barometer I would have for an attacking left-sided player on this Atlanta team with Gonzalo Pineda as the manager. I think it's got to be. You can convince me 7-7, but we're splitting hairs. For me, the baseline's 8-8 for $12 million.
Yeah, so let's kind of fast forward to the summer, and you mentioned Almada and what he's done, and I mean, I don't think it surprised anyone watching or listening to see him gone in the summer. Let's say that Atlanta United says, you know what, we're just going to wash our hands of Luis Araujo as well and just count our losses in the summer. So now you're left with 2 DP slots for Atlanta United. You have Giakoumakis, of course, but now you're left with 2 DP slots. If Atlanta United are left in that situation, how would you build this team around Giakoumakis?
That's a good question, Sydney. First off, I'm going to squash any kind of hypothetical because that ain't happening. Not to be that guy, but I think Thiago Almada more than likely will get 26, 27 million plus. They're going to have to make a decision. They want way more than that. Yeah. Do they get it? I don't know, especially if it's a Serie A team. Then it becomes interesting, right? If it's an English team, they'll get way more than that. I don't think Almada wants to go to England necessarily because I'm not totally sure he'd fit that style. I think the Napoli type of team in Serie A suits him. Higher level Bundesliga, mid-table to higher level La Liga, sure, absolutely, the money's there. I don't think they're going to buy out Luis Araujo. I just don't. And so now the question is, what do you do with Miles Robinson? And I said this during the Nashville game, because it's interesting right now that some people or some clubs, franchises in MLS are not being allowed's the wrong word. How do I say this? Are being, I would say, asked that if you're going to do big money, and I think teams can do it. So, but Aaron Long and Alexander Callens for New York City, both were seeking designated player contracts. Neither one got an offer of that. Now, I know Inter Miami probably would have made Collins a designated player offer, and I know Inter Miami definitely would have made a higher offer than LAFC or Seattle for Aaron Long, and yet they couldn't do it, right? So take that for what it is. I don't know if Atlanta's going to make Miles Robinson a designated player. However, I'll tell you right now, and I believe this, you lose Miles Robinson or Almada, Miles Robinson hurts this team exponentially more. because, and I heard you guys earlier, Giacomakis, you can build around that, right? He's the type of 9 that you could build around in a variety of ways. And so if you lose Almada, you can get natural wingers, delivery in there, more dynamic central midfield, which I think is a real issue for this team when Almada doesn't play, because I feel like we're set to Sejdic, Sosa, Ibar, like they're all the same player. I feel like there's no discrepancy between the two, so there's no real balance. I think if they lose Miles Robinson without a plan, guys, I think that's a bigger hole. And I know some people in Atlanta think I'm nuts. I don't think I am. And I know for a fact there are 2 or 3 teams in this league that if Miles Robinson became available and they can make him a DP, they would 100% make him a DP immediately. That doesn't mean Atlanta will, because maybe Atlanta looks at their 3 DP spots and say, we want to go a different way. But guys, you know this. You guys are Atlanta United fans. They got rid of Nagbe and Gressel to re-sign with the money Miles Robinson.
Yeah.
If you lose him for free, wow. Because now you're talking about you lost Gressel, you lost Nagbe, and then you lose Robinson in 2.5 years later, right? So I'd be stunned if they let him go. I know Bocanegra is on record saying the offer's on the table. But if Miles gets a $3 million a year offer from anywhere in Europe, he shouldn't take the MLS Atlanta United offer. Just shouldn't.
Yeah, I think, and the injury, of course, last year, that kind of really threw a wrench in the plans, because now not only are you out of the picture for the MLS season, but now you're out of the picture for the World Cup. And I feel like you've lost a bit of leverage that you had already. But, so far he's proven that, even though he had this catastrophic injury last year, that he can still get back to a level. He's shown it this year.
You're talking about Miles, Sydney?
Yeah, Miles.
Yeah, Miles hasn't lost any leverage.
All right.
He hasn't. And I know what you're saying.
Right.
Quite honestly, if he went to the World Cup, he would have been gone.
Oh, yeah.
He wouldn't be here this year. So if you're going based on that, sure. But the Bundesliga scouts that I talk to on a regular basis, just where they're picking my brain, they're doing their due diligence, looking around. Miles Robinson's 1A, and if he ain't 1B, if he's not 1A, he's 1B. I'm telling you right now. He's got the profile. I don't think Miles wants to go to Germany. So, Sydney, maybe there's something there. But when Patrick Vieira is at Crystal Palace and he sees Chris Richards, but then also sees Miles Robinson, the word's out in England, he'll get the work permit from what I've gathered. So, I don't think there's a leverage issue. And especially, Sydney, he's free. He's free July 1st. He's got all the leverage in the world, because now all that money that was going to go to any kind of transfer fee after the World Cup now goes into his pocket. He's got a lot of leverage as long as he stays healthy. And I just wonder if it's in the back of his mind, because I don't know about you guys, human nature in my point. Thiago Almada knows right now he's at 26, 27 million, and it's going to turn into 35 to 40. That's got to be in the back of his mind. And Miles Robinson's the same. So listen, they're both pros. I'm not saying that. But human nature-wise, you're talking about massive, massive career-changing moves for both players. I think this becomes a little tricky for Atlanta.
Yeah, and I'll throw this out there too before we move on to Miami. But I think the biggest thing with Miles is Atlanta has ended up kind of on the short end of the stick. That leverage for Atlanta is gone. They don't have an opportunity anymore. And yesterday we were there at the training ground. Bocanegra said, and you have to maybe read between the lines a little bit, but he said the best offer we can give him is on the table. You guys can understand what that means. I get it. You can't offer him more than what you can offer him, right?
Yeah, and I think, Tyler, that point is per MLS rules in certain things. Listen, Walker Zimmerman's contract raised a lot of eyebrows, and the Nashville ownership went to bat hard for Walker Zimmerman to get that deal. I'm a believer in this league. If you're going to have 3 DP spots and then 3 young DP under 22 initiative players, whatever they may be, I'm all for the freedom. If you want to go Walker Zimmerman's, fine, no problem. That's your prerogative. The DP spots, in my opinion, are for the owners to determine which way they want to go. And so that's why I think ultimately the Walker Zimmerman and John Ingram and Nashville deal happened. But Aaron Long immediately, Alexander Collins, as I said, Miles Robinson's another. I just think this league takes another step for growth when the same amount of money on attacking DPs is spent on, if a team wants to, on defenders. Guys, you're talking about a unique array of players to build a roster, and I think if a team wants to do it defensively, they should be allowed to. I've always said that. I'm not saying it sells tickets. You can have that different arguments, but if you want to give me 2 designated player center backs and a 6, and I build my team that way, if a team wants to do that, they should be allowed to.
Maybe one day we'll get a 4th DP.
Tommy, maybe we get rid of the DPs and this league then just has a certain cap and a certain number, and then we are cooking with gas because there's going to be way more diversity of thought and way more ability to sculpt it. And I wouldn't be shocked if that's on the discussion horizon. I'm not saying for next year, but sooner rather than later, because I think a lot of owners, and even Don Garber to an extent, want to have a little bit of a different collection of ways of how to build rosters, especially with the way LAFC is trumping the card and beating everyone at the game of building a roster.
100%. Well, we were just talking about I brought my favorite Taylor Twellman moment. I don't know if you heard earlier.
What, by the way?
Oh, it's a great one. MLS is back tournament. Atlanta United's playing at 9:30 in the morning, and and John Champion go back and forth about English breakfast for a good 5 to 10 minutes. I enjoyed it. We were sitting there drinking mimosas, and you had us on the ground because the conversation would not end. You just kept pushing him on what he was eating, and it was a great moment. I'm glad you're laughing because that was like one of my favorite moments of COVID.
Well, first off, that was just the reason why I'm laughing is I know exactly what I did that day. I know what I did the night before. I know John Champion and I were the only 2 people in the hotel in West Hartford because the entire world was shut down. We go back down to Bristol, and I don't know how or why, but for 2 straight days, I was just like, what do you do? Like, why is that your breakfast? Like, at what point do you not look at it and say, listen, we got weird stuff. Don't get me wrong, but like not like that level. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just like, and he's trying to like defend it. And the best part, Tommy, he was serious. He wasn't like playing along. He was 1,000% serious, which made it even better. Anything John and I did was never shtick. That's why I think it was genuinely funny because it was literally my uncle and his nephew, and we argued about everything, and Mom told me not to, and I was like, I'm arguing with her brother because I can't let this go.
It was a moment, and it just like, and you brought it up like 5 minutes again later, and if you talk to him next, just let him know we brought this back up because it was a great moment.
If I texted him right now, he'd still probably write something of the sort. Yeah, exactly. That's what I told you.
Yeah. You know what I loved about it, like when y'all were on together though, is just as a quick side note, you would poke at him and then he would have this long silence and then he would just come back with it. And it was so funny because you could just see the cogs turning and waiting for that response. It was the chemistry was hilarious.
Tyler, I know you're going to find this surprising. I'm never really short of a comeback, whether it's good or not. I don't know. He actually was better at it, and that's what was alarming for me. So I thought I was Billy Big Time, still do, by the way. But anyways, I thought I was, Billy Big Time, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get everyone. And the first couple times he came back to me, I'm not going to lie to you, I was like, damn it, he's got me.
That's awesome.
Like, I gotta be one step better. And I was like, oh no, this isn't good. He did have 35 years more experience than me. Yep, I'm dating you, John. When you hear this, you're older than me.
There you go.
Tell him to listen.
Yeah.
Well, we've been spending all this time talking about Josef Martinez all off season. We knew it was coming, and you go back and you think about all the issues that's happened. Like after the injury, he comes back, and my second favorite Taylor Twellman moment was we find out Josef Martinez is suspended, I think on Thursday. The game's on Saturday, and I look at the schedule and I see it's on ESPN, and I see you're doing the game. And I thought that was it was perfect, because if you get the home feed, they're not going to talk about it as much. And I knew that you were going to call this franchise out, because at that moment you got Josef, talking to Felipe at the Athletic that he potentially wants out. It's him or Heinze. And you were very honest about just the state of what Atlanta United was at, like where they came from, the top. Mm-hmm. And they're at this moment now where you've got a coach and a player, the franchise player, wanting out. And that was just step one. And then Bocanegra, he calls him out as well. But then those conversations continue in the following off season. And then you've got Pineda, and then you've got chicken and rice. And you've got all these things that have just added up to just basically the fan base dividing themselves, because you've got the guys that say Josef Martinez can still be good, and the other ones are saying we got to get him out here. And now we're here, and we're not even sure if Josef is even going to play. And like, you're saying you're all excited about this at the beginning, and my comment was going to be like, but this might be a little bit of a disappointment, because who knows if we even see him.
I'll be shocked if you don't see him, because I guarantee you, Tommy, Phil Neville's going to tap into that well. Because if there is, and honestly, if there's any sign of hope that Josef can return to 85% of who he is, you're going to find this out Saturday night. That's a fact, not an opinion. Because if there's at all the player that everyone in Atlanta loved, that I loved covering as a neutral, he played, I said this, and I still describe him, he played as if his hair was on fire. That is a compliment in a manner that you weren't going to get to him. He was literally going to run through the wall. Now, ultimately, running through the wall has taken 5 steps back, and I don't think Bocanegra was necessarily wrong. I don't. I think Carlos Bocanegra and that front office were trying to motivate Josef, Tommy, in a weird way. I just disagreed with how Heinze and those guys were doing it, because I saw a player that saw a ghost. Josef Martinez' knee injury was the ghost to him. And I don't know if he's recovered yet, because there's not the same confidence in that body. That body's not the same. Alan Shearer had a nasty knee injury. He was not the same type of player. But he didn't see a ghost. He just found a different way to score goals. John Champion brought that correlation last year, and I thought it was an unbelievable one, because that's kind of what Josef is. He's a goal scorer, but he was way different than Alan Shearer was. But you know what I'm trying to say. I think this Saturday night, the only reason why I was all over this, I was with Apple, MLS, and I said, I want to be in that building no matter what, because Phil Neville is going to look at Josef. He's not going to have to say a single thing, and he's going to find out whether or not Josef is capable of doing this. Now, Josef, Tommy, is not the same guy. He's not fit the way he was, but he saw a ghost, guys. And if he gets rid of that ghost, is there a guy in there that can score 12 to 16 goals a year? Of course there is. You just got to put him on the right team. The problem is Josef can't get out of his own way, because he's not at the same level fitness-wise. He doesn't have the same confidence. And the way Giakoumakis has come into this Atlanta United, guys, I think they made the right move. I do. I firmly believe that, because Giakoumakis looks like, now in saying that, he's got to make sure the hamstring is completely healthy, and he's got to get rid of these reoccurring little hamstring injuries. But the guy looks like he could easily score 20 goals in this league.
The interaction between those two would be really interesting.
But honestly, guys, he's wearing 7.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. we had an entire spaces on that, because people were not happy with that.
Can I tell you though? Doesn't that tell you a little bit about Jorgis, where you're like, I kind of like him.
Confidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's also it's real confidence. Don't get me wrong. Now, if he didn't have 5 goals in his first 5 starts, all of us on this thing would be like, "You're an idiot." What a one. But now he's kind of backed it up, so now you're kind of like, I kind of like him. I mean, I like personality. I know you guys find that surprising. But I like difference. I feel like the younger, newer player. This isn't an old guy get off my lawn type of thing, but I mean that. Like I like different personalities. I like people being themselves. And I thought when he picked 7, I remember telling everybody at MLS and Apple, I'm like, I'm interested in that story, and I'm interested in that player because that is some ballsy moves to say, he's gone. Good, I'll take it. No problem.
Yeah, we know y'all probably going to build a
Joseph
statue.
might stab him, right? Pre-game, I mean, I'm joking, but you know what I'm saying. Like, he might be like, I don't know. I kind of feel like Joseph might 2-foot him in warm-ups out of the clear blue. That would be amazing. Do you know how good Apple TV would be that night if that happened?
Dude, from your mouth to God's ears, I want to see it. I want to see it live, and I can't wait to hear you call it. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. But no, going back, you kind of answered part of my next question, but the other part was Phil Neville, right? He's a guy that he's very outspoken. He gives the impression, okay, my way or the highway to some extent. And knowing what we know about Josef Martinez, how he's got on or not got on with coaches that he's played for in this duration in MLS thus far, even given his talent, I mean, is there a worry that those two personalities will clash?
Sydney, it's a good question. The only thing is, and I'll tell you, Phil Neville, good on him. Because he literally looked at Gonzalo Higuain and said, it's my way or the highway. Yeah. And it's actually less my way or the highway. It's the team's highway or you're out of here.
Sure.
And I think he got Joseph's attention. Now, it's up to Joseph whether or not he wants to change or give it his best. Yeah. Everything I've heard is Joseph is giving it his all, right? But you guys know better than me. Didn't Joseph just become a dad in the middle of this preseason, I think? Mm-hmm. Right? So there could be another part of Joseph that's a little distracted.
Maybe was born premature as well, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I thought. So I'm glad you brought it up, Tyler, because I thought I heard that. So I just, I think Phil's going to give Sydney Joseph some time, but I think that clock's running out a little bit. And I think that's why I think this weekend, I'm not sure you see Joseph start. Do I think you see Joseph play 25, 30 minutes? I do. And then I think Phil's going to get his answer of whether or not Joseph wants to buy in. But from all accounts, and you guys know I'm asking, I've heard 3 weeks ago Joseph started to show some real signs of old Joseph, which I think that's got everyone excited. But he did it to Gonzalo Higuain. So, Sydney, I don't think anyone in Miami is worried about any personality clash because that one clashed, and then Gonzalo came back and scored, 11 goals? And it was like 12 games or something stupid.
Yeah, he lit himself on fire. It was crazy. But, yeah, this whole match just has everything that you want, I think. I mean, it's not like it's a derby, right? It's not like it's an established rivalry, but the storyline's there. Storyline's amazing. So,
especially Tyler with the rumor of Tata Martino wanting to come back from Major League Soccer.
Yeah. If he ends up
I mean, listen, the way Atlanta came into this league, Inter Miami looked at Atlanta and said, we're going to do that, but our way, the South Florida way, and once we get our stadium, we're going to be better than you. There is a front office, big brother, little brother competition, for lack of a better, I don't know how to describe it better than that. It may not be big brother, little brother, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. I think this becomes very intriguing. I really do. If Messi, Busquets come this summer, the way all the rumors and signs are pointing to, that stadium's built, World Cup comes here, I think we may be talking about Atlanta-Miami more than any rivalry that Atlanta thinks they have down the road. I don't think it's there now, but if Joseph bags in a couple goals, boys, I don't know. This could get ugly quick.
Yeah, it jumps to the top real quick, for sure.
It does.
We talked about it with Jake last week on here about what is the rivalry, because you have Orlando, but that feels kind of manufactured, I think, at times. Nashville has always been a good shot for me. That's what I told him, because it seems more natural and the fans just don't like each other. And Charlotte's just not there enough yet. It's still new. So Miami, now that the storylines are there, it has all the recipe and the makings of it. So it'll be I don't
Because
want
it's
him
got
to
the
spoil
marquee, the glitz and the glamour. Once they get that stadium done, Nashville's a real rivalry to me for you guys. It's eerily similar to Seattle and Portland.
Yeah.
Not based on the history, but based on the fan bases, the cities, the owners, the way they spend money, the contrast, everything about it. It feels natural. The Orlando one, I loved at ESPN for years just because Josef opened his mouth every time and then would bang in like a goal of the year and then would act like it. But Orlando never really beat Atlanta in anything meaningful. Charlotte could be same type of NFL owner, massive money, huge crowds, but right now they're not in the same stratosphere. So this Miami one becomes interesting, and I think Josef could kickstart it. I really do.
Yeah. So to piggyback on that, what are the two keys, I guess, for each team? Who needs to do what in this one? I mean, we talked about Josef plenty. I know Almada is always the buzzword, I guess, but for each team, what are the two keys for each team to kind of pull out a win?
Well, you said it simple. I think Jakob Marquez, if he plays with Almada, that connection, what does that look like? I think more so, I find Atlanta to be much better when their wide players are in sync with each other, because then it takes away from the inconsistencies of the three in the midfield and the balance. I like Sosa. I do. I don't like Sosa in any kind of the pairings that he's with Atlanta United. Does that make sense? So that becomes an intriguing player and one that is difficult. But I think when their wide players are in sync with each other and a part of creating that width, I think Atlanta's good. Listen, Miami was very good against Columbus, guys. Columbus is a fantastic team. I watch them every week, any game I can. Wilfred Nancy is a fantastic manager. And I think if he gets this Columbus project right, he will be the manager of the four biggest franchises in this league in the blink of an eye, because he did it at Montreal with no money. He's gone to Columbus with a little bit more money, and yet he's done something that they're just fun to watch. And Miami beat them. Miami's got to be very smart with their positioning, their defensive structure. Once they lost Gregory, that killed them. So now they've got to do it in sync with each other. Kamal Miller, similar to Miles Robinson, contract up at the end of the year. Where is he? But he's a bona fide center back in this league. But if they don't defend well, they're in trouble. Campana's an interesting story there, right? And so when he's healthy, they're just better. I think his style of play suits Phil Neville and this team in trying to make the game as simple as possible for their team while trying to be dangerous on the other end. He's a real presence, which is also why Josef could have a bigger impact coming off the bench for the last 25, 30 minutes or playing as a second forward, depending on how that goes. But I think it all depends on how Miami defends. If they defend well, they'll get after this team. They'll find a way to create chances just because Campana is dangerous.
So you talk about good coaching, right? And Pineda has come in, and they were hoping that he'd be able to grow in as a young coach, had success as an assistant. But the fan base is getting frustrated with Pineda. Mm-hmm. And
how so, Tommy?
Well, you have a big franchise that Atlanta United. You bring in a guy that hasn't been a head coach before. Tactics have been questionable throughout some of the time and some of the play that they have. And people are asking the question, is Atlanta United a team that is a breeding ground for a young coach to come in? Because we've seen experience come in and we've seen it work and we've seen it not work, right? Like it's players aren't getting Watergate. We've been there. I have to bring it up, Tyler. And now you have Garth Lagerwey come in, possibly the best front office person of all time of MLS. Do you think that if things don't go well at the end of this year, he goes out and finds his own guy?
He's never been able to. So that people need to understand, Garth Lagerwey, as successful as he's been, and as understanding of each franchise that he's been at, whether it's Real Salt Lake or Seattle, that manager, when he's there before he got there, has been very successful and stayed successful. Now, I argue with Garth, That's a sign of success. Whether you hired him or not, you found a way to work. But you would have to think human nature. Garth, at some point in his career, would like to pick his coach. But Garth isn't dumb. So if Gonzalo Pineda has this team playing at a high level and this team's successful, then Tommy's going to be the manager. But I said it at the beginning of the year, and I'll say it now. Gonzalo's coaching for his job. Gonzalo's not an idiot. He knows that. And especially with this team. I think what's more intriguing, though, Tommy, is not the manager. It's how quickly Garth and company can get out of some of the contracts that they signed, roster build, and kind of redo this. And it started, listen, I know I'm going to piss everyone off, so that's why part of the reason why I'm going to tell the truth. Part of the reason why the contracts are still bad, Tata Martino did not set this thing up well for the long term. Set it up well short term, but not for the long term. And so that after Tata leaves and in that transition, that's where this thing becomes a little hazy. I'm not excusing any of the decisions, but I'm just saying to people in this league where everything has to be long term now because of the salary cap and the way it's constructed, you can't just say like a Dodgers can or the Dolphins can, where they just come into that season going, nope, we're going for it. We're going. The LA Rams, great example, right? They trade 17 first-round picks. They have nothing for the next 7 years, but they win the Super Bowl. You can't really do that in this league because if you win, great, but it's actually worse than any other league in this country. It's like double the time to get back, right? So long term, you got to have that picture. Gonzalo Pineda is coaching for his job. But me as an outsider from 10,000 feet, as you guys have asked me, which is why I think I'm going to give that perspective, I'm actually way more interested in the roster construction. They'll find the manager that fits that. But I look at this roster right now, and I see a very, very complicated, unbalanced roster. We've talked about it already. I'll repeat it. The midfield seems like it's a bunch of the same players. I'd argue the wingers, it's a lot of like for likes. So if you try to change tactics, which, Tommy, I'm bringing this full circle to your question, in Gonzalo's defense, I don't know if you can change tactics a ton if it's the same players, if it's the same profile of players. So that's where that becomes interesting. But I think being critical of Gonzalo's tactics is very fair. I felt like the second half against Nashville, there was no tactic change, and there should have been. And I said a couple of those on air. But it's a long-winded answer, Tommy. The answer is Gonzalo's coaching for his job, and he knows it.
For sure. And like you bring up the comment about Tata and the franchise. I mean, that goes back to we get Bocanegra comments nonstop on our shows. And that there was a huge disconnect because Tata didn't want Barco. Tata didn't want Pity Martinez. Like those were two guys that he did not want. And like I think that's partially why he went out. I mean, I know he had interest in running Mexico, but like the front office just hasn't seemed like a well-functioning machine in years.
No, I mean, listen, I disagree with anyone. P.T. Martinez, he's the South American Player of the Year. That's not a bad signing. It's not a bad signing. It's just not. Now, was he used the right way? Did he play the same level as Miguel Almirón? No matter what he did, if he didn't do what Miguel Almirón did, he was going to be heavily criticized. But guys, an MLS franchise signed the South American reigning Player of the Year. That is not a bad signing. Then they moved on from him. And they got, 16 million euros or whatever the number is that's public, whatever that is. So fine. The Barco one was interesting. The Barco one is very interesting. Listen, no matter what Tata's people said, and I was very close with Tata. We got along. We had some good arguments, which I enjoyed, right? But he knew he could have an argument and discuss things, and it wasn't going to go public. I'd enjoy it, but I would 1,000% question some of the things he said. I'm going to tell you this right now. He knew a year and a half into this Atlanta deal that Mexico or the United States or our national team was coming. He knew that. So whether or not he wanted P.T. Martinez or Barco or whoever that may be, I'm going to say it's a little disingenuous because he did know the interest from Mexico was at the front of the page immediately. You know what I'm saying? So, right. He kind of knew he was leaving. But I go back to DeBoer. I was critical of DeBoer But I always was critical of DeBoer, saying he's still getting the results. Guys, he should have been hosting. You guys should have hosted MLS Cup that year.
100%.
See what I'm saying, Tyler? So, like, I was there for the Champions Cup when they beat, was it Club America?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. I was there for that. That was a fantastic
That was the one
event.
where Renowitz scored a banger from like
a banger. Naturally, that's the only reason why I brought up Jeff Venmo me $20. But then I did the Open Cup final.
Yeah.
It just wasn't at the same level the way Almiron and Tata did. But guys, I got to tell you, it still was successful. So Tommy, I'm sorry to go long, but PT Martinez for me was not a bad signing. Barco, in hindsight, okay, fine, but they just hit a home run with Almada. And if they didn't sign Tata Martino, just so everyone's clear, they were not getting Miguel Almiron.
Right.
So, as I'm critical of Tata, I am going to say, yeah, you also got $27 million because that guy recruited Miguel Almiron and turned him over. So there's always these kinds of discussions. I just am a little surprised from the DeBoer MLS is back moment where it's gone from there. That is more alarming to me than the Tata to DeBoer, because I was there front and center covering this team, and I didn't think DeBoer – I was critical of him. I'm not saying anything so the fans miss me with any criticism, saying you criticize him all the time. It's not what I'm saying. But it wasn't – it's now – you know, when you look back on it, it was almost as successful. They won trophies. They just lost the game to Toronto that they should have never lost.
Yeah. And history, because that was Josef. You don't expect him to miss that penalty, right? Yeah, ever.
Nope.
And yes, that's a painful moment. I wish we could talk about this all night. I want to respect your time for sure, because I know you've got plenty of stuff going on. You got to get ready for the matches this weekend.
Well, I took the over in the Celtics 76ers game, so it just tipped off. So whatever you guys want to do.
Well, look. So who wins?
Well, I know the Hawks lost to the Celtics, so we're good.
Yeah.
What
I mean,
dig.
that's not even. I act like I'm bragging. That's a big win. Should I go now?
The door's over there. No, look, that's Tommy's sport. That's Tommy's sport. I'm gonna let him jump in on that one.
That hurts.
So I can't believe you guys haven't brought up the fact that I completely failed on my prediction of Atlanta United being a good soccer town.
Well, to be fair,
what a bad. I missed that one by just a little bit.
Just a little.
To be fair, everybody, I think was like, that's SEC country. Who?
It is, but Tyler, St. Louis Cardinals fan, and when you guys had the best pitching staff in the history of Major League Baseball and couldn't sell out a regular season game until the World Series, I was like, why would they're going to go to soccer? They didn't go watch Glavine and Maddox in Smoltz. They're not going to do that. And then my first weekend in Atlanta, I sent a note to everyone in MLS's front office, and I'm like, just raising my hand, I'm going to own this for 20 years. You remember Dumb and Dumber when he says the town is 5 miles that way? I should have came on air and said the town is 75 miles. I missed that one by a mile. I mean, unbelievable, brutal.
A mile. We forgive
it's
you.
One of the best.
Yes.
You guys are. It's awesome, and the reason why it's awesome, there's real anger. I love it. Like I love getting in the Uber, and the guy stops and he goes, "You don't know anything about our right back situation," or something like that. I'm like, yes. Yes, I love this.
Let's go.
So good. I love it. So good.
Anger.
Then immediately I'm telling him, drop me off. I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
Anger is better than apathy.
Oh, Sydney, I love it because it means people care.
Exactly.
And you guys know me by now. I'm a huge all sports guy.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of SEC type of vitriol and that kind of. I love it. I just love it, and I hope it never changes because that means you guys and the fan base care. I know Arthur Blank is 1,000% cognizant of just how passionate it is. And Darren Eales was. It's awesome. It's a real – this is when Garth Lagerwey asked me, what do you think? And I looked at him. I was like, buddy, this is what we dream of. A market that cares, a market that will hold you accountable, a market that has a level of expectation. Spoiled or not, different podcast. But it doesn't matter, right? Like I love it. I love it. It's just fun. It's a good time to cover, And this Saturday night against Miami, even though you guys are an away team, I just love it.
Yeah.
And no signs
Jim
of slowing
Curtin's
down.
going to disagree with you, though. Jim Curtin says you need to check everybody's driver's license to make sure, that they're from Atlanta.
Can't wait for that match.
Yeah, but Tommy, that's also why I love Jim. He's from Philly.
Yeah.
Like they hate Santa Claus, dude. Like that's awesome. That's what we want. But Jim also hates Ted Lasso. I called him on that one. I'm like, come on, dude. Ted Lasso. I cry every episode. I laugh every episode. How do you hate Ted Lasso? Like, honestly.
Didn't he say it hurts like U.S. coaches as well? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, listen.
Go ahead. July 2nd is circled on a lot of people's calendars. That's when Philly comes to town. So
I know. And if El Tráfico, slip of the tongue, similar but different. El Tráfico got rescheduled, and so now I'm off the Atlanta Philly game, and I'm now doing the July 4th at the Rose Bowl. I mean, it's not a bad game to do. Don't get me wrong.
That's a good one.
But Philly Atlanta was circled on mine right when the schedule came out. I go, yep, I want to do that game.
I was about to say, let's do this. I'll meet you at the Benz, buy you a beer. And
absolutely, on air. I mean, I do my best work.
That would be amazing. Hey, and it's cheap beer too. So
that's the best part too. Arthur's like, no, $5 beers. I'm like, where is it? Did I die and go to heaven? But then I go to Chick-fil-A and it's $75 for a meal. I'm like, oh yeah, Arthur doesn't own that. No.
Yeah. No, he forgot about that one. All right, Taylor. We appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you so much.
Absolute amazing time. Welcome back anytime, by the way.
Yeah, let's do it. Next time I do Atlanta, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We'll hit you up.
Be good, guys. Appreciate all your support. And honestly, criticism is vital for us to grow. So please keep it going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Taylor.
See you guys.
Cheers.
See you, sir.